والآن وصلنا إلى الجلسة ما قبل الأخيرة، الجلسة المتخصصة الرابعة مع الأستاذ بول بيفال، يحدثنا عن هلوسات الذكاء الاصطناعي في إطار محو الأمية في هذا الخصوص واستراتيجيات التعامل معها ومع التحيز. تفضل.
Clickers went. Thank you. Old picture. I'll start chatting before the slides come up. One thing I love about going to conferences is hearing all the questions. But one thing I hate is just having questions and not hearing the speakers provide answers. And it's my hope that I'm going to give you some answers to at least some of your questions during this presentation. They're not going to change the world, my answers, but I hope that they will give you some confidence as you're using generative AI within your library systems. It was kind of interesting when I received the request to put together a presentation on this particular topic. The translations for the title were slightly different 2 or 3 different times. They all came to the same meaning in the end, but I just kind of found that interesting as well. One of my roles at the University of Calgary is to liaise with students in a new center that we have set up between the library and our school or faculty of education. That center is called CALI, the Center for AI Ethics, Literacy, and Integrity. So those are the things that the library has chosen to focus on within our campus environment. We have other departments on campus who are more facing the faculty side of things. So in my role, I talk to librarians about how to use AI, and I talk to students about how to use AI. And more specifically, not just how to effectively use it, but how to use it ethically and with integrity, how not to cheat, especially if you're not intending to. And I'm going to tell you a secret. It shouldn't come as a surprise when you compare that older picture to the actual reality here. I realized a little while ago, I've actually been a librarian since before the public World Wide Web came out. And this, as of necessarily, that would also mean since before Google came out. I see mostly younger faces in the audience. There are a few of my generation who have gone through this as well. But when the World Wide Web became known to the public in 1993, many people, including those in academia and including other librarians, many people wondered whether librarians would continue to be necessary if people could just find everything on the internet. I would imagine that you've even now heard those questions. I believe, as I'm sure you do, that then we were still necessary, and now we are still necessary. I'm here to tell you, or to remind you, or to make you understand, help you understand that your role as a librarian is not being replaced by AI. It's becoming more essential because of AI. You, and you're going to hear some of the same themes that you've heard throughout the presentations and throughout our panel discussion, but you are the critical human in the loop. You will be asked to guide your beneficiaries in the use of these tools, and your role is essential. No one else is stepping forward. No other industries, no other academic fields are stepping forward to help the beneficiaries. understand how to ethically and effectively use these tools with integrity. All right. So imagine a new patron walks into your library. This person has read the entire internet. They're incredibly fast. They speak every language, almost. And they're endlessly eager to help. Just want to do that more than anything else. They just want to help. However, this patron also confidently makes up facts. They've absorbed many of the world's prejudices, and they can't always or won't tell you where they learned something. That patron, of course, that beneficiary, if you will, is generative AI. So let's personify it there. I'd like you to think back to your time as you became educated as a librarian. Think back to what we in the States and in Canada call library school. There was something in every reference class called the reference interview, where you learned how to tease out the information that the patron, that the beneficiary wanted to actually learn from you as the information professional. Oftentimes they would come with a very vague question, and you would have to say, well, you know, what is it that you're actually after? And a lot of what we have to do with ChatGPT and generative AI tools in general is kind of flip the script on that and actually conduct a reference interview in order to tell the tool what it is that we're after. So, as is true around the world, I actually have a list of references that I believe somehow will get to you, but there was one in particular. There's a growing use of AI in the Middle East, as there is around the world, no surprise. But I feel it's very important to understand these tools, as do you, in both English and Arabic contexts. One of the recent studies highlighted that while AI usage is growing, there was actually a study done amongst library students here in Jordan that shows, unsurprisingly, because this is true everywhere, but there is room for improvement. So that still underscores the need for some targeted training. So this is where you hear some of the stuff that Michael already talked about. We, librarians, we're already experts in information literacy, or at least we continually strive to be. The principles we practice of evaluating resources, identifying authority, and thinking critically are the perfect foundation for AI literacy. AI literacy is not a replacement, but an extension of these skills. So the things that you've been doing for your entire career can and should be applied to your use and training around the use of generative AI. You probably are familiar with IFLA, the International Federation of Library Associations. Wonderful AI-focused, not the entire organization, but they have an interest group focused on AI, and they do wonderful work. They've got guidelines, they have suggestions, they do meetings on a regular basis to talk about different tools, but they certainly encourage libraries and librarians to help their beneficiaries understand how AI works, including those ethical questions. So here's where we start to get to the answers. I'd like to focus on a very simple three-part framework on AI literacy, tailored for librarians. I want you to understand the tools. I'm not going to tell you how the tools work. I've got like 12 more minutes to talk. So just at the very high level, you need to understand how the tools work. But where I'm going to focus is on identifying the flaws and applying our skills. So we've seen, again, some of these analogies, but the level that I want to make sure that all of my colleagues, all of you understand at the very least, is that these large language models are simply prediction machines. We've seen a couple of different slides that show that in one way or another. The first analogy there on the left, though, is autocomplete on steroids. Michael was talking about the instance, I think it was Michael, where researchers asked Claude, I think it was, to find a word that rhymed, and it was looking for rabbit, something like that. And what that slide also pointed out was that it isn't just the next word. These tools can and do predict very far into what it is that they're going to be bringing back. So again, understand that these tools don't know anything. They are simply, based on the information that they were trained upon, bringing back the most likely next word that makes sense. That's it. Analogy number 2, a mosaic artist. So on the image generation side, if you will. Once again, these tools don't understand the meaning of what they're building. They are simply acting upon the data upon which they're trained until they get to a point where they're able to produce this picture, and it, according to the algorithms that they've got, it is what you asked for, but it doesn't know it. So the key takeaway is that because it predicts instead of knowing, there's no truth in the design of any generative AI tool. No point when these things were programmed in Palo Alto or wherever in Silicon Valley, there's no line in there that says, this is what you're all about, oh, and you can only tell the truth. It doesn't exist in there. That's not why these things were built. Yes, you can prompt one of these tools to supposedly only tell you the truth. Gets you pretty far, but not all the way. But it's just important to know that, you know, a search engine was built to find a very specific thing, whether or not it's the truth, but it's this concrete thing. Large language models, generative AI tools, that's not in their programming. They just predict and present to you something. Oftentimes it's made up, oftentimes it's correct, but it's important to know the difference. So, number 2 then, identify these flaws. The first one, hallucinations. We've all heard it. I'm not going to say it because I fear offending, but I prefer the word BS to hallucinations. It's confidently saying, this is the truth, even though it's not the truth. Yeah, I just want to leave it at that, right? Like, you know that these tools make things up, and however you want to describe that, it's something that you always need to remember, regardless of how confident the tool appears to be or says that it is. You've always got to double check. Are there any lawyers in the room? Maybe. He's not a lawyer. Good, because we're going to talk about them. I have a theory. I mean, you've seen this as well, I'm sure. For whatever reason, and I have some theories which I'll share with you, I think the legal profession has become the poster child for how not to use generative AI. Not a week goes by that I don't see a newspaper or a website article talking about how yet another lawyer attempted to submit a legal brief that was either entirely made up or more likely enhanced, but it included a bogus citation. In my world, in academia, the fear has long been that students would do the same sort of thing, but with academic citations. My theory is twofold around the lawyers. One, I suspect that in their training, as they are at school and learning how to be lawyers, they are not trained to think as critically about the information that they are retrieving. And the reason that I think that is, I think because it's such a closed environment, they have this modicum of trust. They think, well, I'm using Westlaw, Lexis, whatever the equivalent would be around the world, and because it was in there, I trust it. That's how I was trained. And that's not the case, obviously, with these generative AI tools. But the second reason is when you think about upon what data were these models trained, back in the day when Google first started coming onto the scene, there was this concept of the dark web. Google knew everything, except it didn't, and it doesn't. It can't see beyond firewalls. It can't see into library databases. And the same is true for the way ChatGPT and its brethren were trained. It got its hands on everything it could, but that's not everything there is. So the databases, the legal databases that I mentioned, those are not involved in the training of these large language models. And that's also true of the academic literature, by and large. There's plenty of open data that these web tools were able to scrape, but there's an awful lot more that, again, are closed behind licensed databases. And so when a student, when somebody is asking a generative AI tool to produce a citation, it can't in some cases. It has not seen the data that backs up whatever it is trying to do. And so what it does is fall back upon its training, and it simply creates what looks like a citation. So again, that's one of the flaws that you always need to remember. It's not news, it's not shocking, it's just remember it. Apologies for the layout on that slide, but I think you can get the gist of the information. Also remember that large language models are trained on data created by humans, by all of us. And they inherit our societal biases. That can be related, as we've already discussed, to things like gender, race, culture, and language. So, again, we've already talked about the dominance of English within the majority of these language tools. Some of the biases, before I get to the language there, on the left-hand side there, I had asked, I believe this was Microsoft Copilot. I didn't give it any further information, which is against what you'll see later, but I just said, show me some librarians. And that's what it came up with. And I guess I can kind of see myself up in there. When I look out here, I don't see as many of you represented there, and that's an example of a cultural bias. You've seen it before. It's, again, just a reminder for you. More interestingly, on the right-hand side there, cultural and linguistic biases. And again, not new, especially to those of you outside of the English-speaking world. This is something that you probably struggle with much more frequently than I do. Incidentally, just as an aside, it's been fascinating for me over the last 3-4 years to learn as much as I have about how these tools were built and how these biases do propagate. But I just wanted to come up with an example there. I have a series of prompts where I try to help students talk to chatbots rather than just give me the answer. They give me a response that might have been given by somebody, a specific somebody, somebody from history. And I asked Google Gemini about Abdulhamid Shoman and what his conflict mediation style would be. And Google Gemini said, can't do that, I don't know. Which is kind of weird because Google knows. Just at this particular point, Gemini didn't. I found other language models that did a great job, as far as I know, answering that question. They would talk about perhaps the way he would approach a particular conflict and suggest a mediation. And so my point there is just as a reminder that not all of these tools, none of these tools are equal to each other. There will be some that do a better job of this thing, some that do a better job of this other thing. So it's a filter bubble that we need to be aware of. So, strategies for dealing with these problems. Here's the answer part. And again, I promised earlier, it's not earth-changing. You might sleep a little better tonight, but it's not curing cancer yet. Trust. These tools are pretty good, but always verify. It's the single most important rule, the golden rule. But there are a couple of other strategies that will help you trust and verify, or not trust, but to verify. And again, the same strategies that you've used through your entire careers as you answered information needs types of questions. The first is lateral reading. Open up another browser tab, have another source available to you, and when ChatGPT comes back with an answer, if it's not a topic that you're completely familiar with, do some other searches, check some other tools, check your more traditional library databases. On the one hand, I mean, every time I suggest this to students, in the back of my mind, I'm thinking, well, if I'm doing that, why am I bothering with the first question? My hope is that once I have built up enough trust with a particular product, I would be able to usually trust it, and I will verify a little bit less frequency. But until that point, this is a strategy that you will want to employ and something that you'll want to include whenever you're talking to your beneficiaries about how to use these tools. And the second one there, go to the source. Find out what that source is. Even if the tool doesn't tell you that, you, as information professionals, can find the source. Remember that from your training. Yes, this is a different kind of tool, but you already know how to do this, so do it. If it doesn't provide a source, ask it to. Some tools always provide it, sometimes they don't. Even if the source is incorrect, at least you've got a starting point. There are a lot of different frameworks. Robot, React, I think, is one. Clear is one. Each of those letters equal an acronym which stand for something. I've fallen back on this one. I kind of like it as a nice and simple one, the 4 C's. These are the types of things that you will want to always talk to or always include when you're talking to an AI tool. So here is a strategy for the reference interview where you are acting as what, rather than having the AI tool interview you, you're going to provide it with that information ahead of time. So always provide the context. Why are you asking this question of this tool? And this would work in most academic settings as well as a general type of a chatbot. So the example here, I'm a librarian creating a reading list. That is the context. Constraints. Well, tell me a little bit more. What is it that you're trying to create a reading list about? And an example would be only include books published after 2020, and they must be available in Arabic. Clarity, again, be as specific and unambiguous. Don't make it guess. It's probably going to default to the most generic response. So tell it specifically what you're after. And then, again, just kind of hitting the hammer again, the 4th C is to cite. Always end your prompt, if it isn't a tool that already does this, with please provide verifiable sources for all factual claims. And that will get you, again, a step closer to finding the information that you need to verify. So to summarize, generative AI is a powerful tool. It is something that we're going to be using for the foreseeable future, till something else comes along to replace it, probably for the future. But it really is fallible. It does hallucinate, and it does reflect our biases back to us. As I said in the outset, your expertise in critical evaluation, source verification, and ethical information access has never been more crucial. We're not just librarians. We are the essential human in the loop when dealing with these machines. We are the guides our communities need to navigate this technology both wisely and effectively. And as I alluded to in the panel presentation, I'm not sure if it's going to be a centaur model, a cyborg model, some other model, but the way forward is a combination of human and machine expertise, if you will, human expertise, machine capabilities. And our role is to be the critical, ethical, and strategic partner within that relationship. That's not something that we can offload to the AI. Thank you very much. I would invite you, I hope that somebody reaches out at some point in the future. There's an email address. I don't put it up there to let you know I have one. If there's a conversation after this that you'd like to have, one of the things that I found most valuable in my now 3 days in Jordan is the conversations. And I'd love to continue those conversations. So let's have some now. Please, any questions that you might have. And I've got to put on my headphone, but again, I encourage you in the future. Shall we give it a go? I can hear. Sorry, I wasn't looking. There. Okay, please.
Thank you for your presentation. In part 2, you say trust and verify. How to verify if I not trust?
In general, as you are introducing yourself and your beneficiaries to these tools, start with a subject that you are familiar with. As you start to learn the intricacies of any given tool, again, I'll just use ChatGPT as the generic catch-all, you probably will get a good feel for which topics you and it agree upon and which ones it doesn't seem to know as much as you do. But beyond that, go back to, I guess, what was it? Go back to 2022, before these things came on the scene. How would you have answered that same question? Which tools would you have used? Be it a traditional library database, maybe it was a search engine that you've become fond of and that you feel does usually do a good job of answering that question. So it, at least initially, does create additional work. So you're going to duplicate your search. You're going to try and find enough information that makes you comfortable that whatever the chat tool came back with is probably correct. Please, yes, over here.
Excuse me?
Thank you for this paper. I want to ask you a question. Would you please tell us if you choose the photograph of Petra?
Did I
Why?
choose it? No, I didn't. I generated
Yes.
it.
Yes.
I didn't speak to it, but on one of on the very first slide, there were two pieces of generated information, both of which had errors, and it was my hope that you would see them. The image of Petra, I said, give me something that looks like Petra but isn't, and it had far too many columns. I think it was almost twice as many as it needed, or that it had. And the second one, and these were just examples of the fallible way that these tools can produce information. The second one was a little poem, and it talked about how Petra was built and by whom, and it wasn't in fact built by the pharaohs, at least as far as I know. So again, just some silly little examples.
Thank you. Another suggestion. May I add a third strategy for reading the context of the ChatGPT writing or telling us to write? The C. Yes, right. The third one, let someone else read for you. This is the third strategy. Yes.
That's an interesting
You agree?
one. So are you suggesting, and if you
Yeah.
are, I do agree, you may have an opinion with what
This
it
is
came back with, but I might say, what do you think? Does this look good? Do you have more expertise? So that is another excellent
Thank you.
approach. Yeah, thank you.
عزيزي، يعني سعدت بسماع هذه المداخلة والتي كانت موجهة أكثر لأمناء المكتبات، لكن حقيقة أن نجد بيننا في هذا العصر من يدعو للأنسنة والحفاظ على روابط أخلاقية مهنية في التعامل، فهذا يطمئننا أننا سنكون بخير بوجود هذا التوجه وهذا التفكير. أشكرك، ونتمنى يعني أن يكون هناك الكثير من يتبنون هذا الفكر الذي يؤنسن العمل قبل أن يكون عملا ماديا ملموسا. كل التحايا وشكرا لوجودك في الأردن.
Thank you very much. Got one here. I'm not. Your questions are too hard. We'll get to you in a minute.
السلام عليكم. منار رمضان، مديرة مكتبة. بالضبط، يعطيك العافية. عرفت نفسي بمديرة مكتبة جامعة البتراء على أساس إحنا شايفك من الجامعة بتشبهنا بنفس القطاعات، فكنت بدي أسأل الأستاذ مؤمن وحضرتك جاوبت على سؤالي. القواعد البيانات الإلكترونية اللي بتكلف الجامعات والقطاعات مبالغ كبيرة، ما زال الشات جي بي تي بعيد عنها، إلا الأوبن أكسس اللي هي أوريدي الكل بيستعملها. فمن هون زي سؤال أستاذة فالنتينا، من هون لل 35 هل الجامعات والقطاعات الأكاديمية رح بوجود الشات جي بي تي تتخلص من قواعد البيانات وتكلفتها العالية، رغم إنه أصلاً طلابنا ما بيستعملوها وبيستعملوا الشات جي بي تي وبيجيبوا من مصادر غير موثوقة، ومرات أعضاء الهيئة التدريسية بيضطروا إنهم يوافقوا لهم عليها مشان الطالب بده علامة. فوين قواعد البيانات من الذكاء الاصطناعي ومن التوفير على البشرية المبالغ الطائلة اللي بتنحط على قواعد البيانات، ورغم إنه إحنا كلياتنا الآن عالميا بنقول في التنمية المستدامة وحق الكل بالحصول على المعرفة، فالمفروض إنه في شات جي بي تي خاص لقواعد البيانات، وتكون آخر مثلا 4-5 سنوات ممكن تكون مغطاة ماليا، بس قبل ذلك المفروض أنها تكون متاحة على الشات جي بي تي اللي أصبح الآن بيشبه بدايات الجوجل والإنترنت. شكرا لك.
I think I understood the question to be, just to boil it down, can we envision within the next 10 years that our expensive databases either entirely or to some extent disappear so we don't have to spend as much money, either because students aren't just using them, or more hopefully because the information that's currently contained within them would instead be available through a more generic tool that somebody has used. Am I on the right track with that question?
نعم، بس أنتم في الجامعات الأمريكية هل بتستعملوا زينا قواعد البيانات ونفس المشاكل بتعانوا منها؟
Absolutely. At my university, which is half the size of Michael's, we subscribe to approximately 1,182 databases. If I went to our list of databases, there is a number, and it's roughly in that space. It is our largest budget. Well, people, I think, cost more than the databases, but that's the next biggest expenditure. So yes, we do struggle with the same problem. I can imagine the failure of some of perhaps the less financially secure database vendors, and I don't know anything about the security of them, but you know, maybe Gale is the third or fourth one, and so maybe Gale gets swallowed up, and there will be more, I'm drawing a blank on the word, consolidation amongst the vendors. I can't imagine that somebody like Elsevier is going to roll over and die. They are going to keep a hold of the data that they have in their products. They are already enhancing They call it enhancing. I haven't used it enough to know if it's truly an enhancement or just another way of accessing the data, but they're incorporating AI within those tools. Some of the vendors are giving the AI enhancement along with our current subscription. Most of the big ones seem to be adding costs. If you want the AI, it's going to be another $20,000. All that to say, I certainly can't say one way or the other. I think that there will still be expensive databases that contain specialized information that is not available anywhere else. Again, the legal examples. They've got too much invested. They're not going to release it to the wild. And so we will be beholden to them. I don't think this is going to be a magic budgetary fix. Please.
هيك أحسن. يعطيك العافية. بداية كنت حابة أسأل، هل إدخال الذكاء الاصطناعي اليوم على المكتبات ممكن يهدد حقوق النشر والحقوق الفكرية والإبداعية للكتاب والباحثين؟ في النهاية إدخال كل هذا الكم من المعلومات على الذكاء الاصطناعي، محتواهم، المعلومات، سهولة الوصول للمعلومة، ممكن يأخذ الملكية الفكرية للباحث أو للكاتب حتى. وكيف ممكن نحن نستخدم الذكاء الاصطناعي مع حفظ هاي الحقوق، حقوق النشر الفكرية والإبداعية، وحتى حقوق الباحثين في الاختراع، أو حتى في الأوراق البحثية، الأوراق النقاشية اللي هم ممكن ينزلوها. هل في ممكن نحن نعمل زي تقنين لاستخدام الذكاء الاصطناعي في المكتبات؟ ولو كان في، فمين صاحب السلطة؟ المكتبة نفسها أم سلطة أعلى؟ يعطيك العافية. شكرا.
Thank you. Excellent and interesting question. As we've already established, there are no lawyers here, so nobody here can specifically answer that question. My understanding of most of the traditional publishing world is that, to some extent, certainly in academia, whenever we publish, we are often already giving up our rights, our copyright, to the vendor, to the publisher, to Elsevier or whomever. There has long been, for 20 years or more, the idea of the open access movement. And at my institution, we encourage all of our faculty to, whenever possible, publish something in an open access publication, thus allowing that information to be seen by the world, but also retaining the rights. That said, in either case, retaining my rights to an article that I've written, to research that I've conducted, or having given it up, in which case it's beyond my control, I don't know that there's any legal, authors and authors guilds and publishers are suing in North America. They are suing many, if not all, of the major AI vendors. But as individual academics, I feel that we're publishing for a different reason, which is to get the knowledge out there anyway. I'm not in academia or librarianship to get rich. And so I think it's to me a gift to the rest of the world. That may be a little woo-woo, but that's how I think of it. On the commercial side of things, it's a whole different issue, but I'm not in that world, so it's something that I don't spend my time thinking of. I don't know if that helps or answers at all, but those are some of my thoughts.
أكيد هو بيجاوب هذا السؤال، ولكن كانت فكرتي بأنه هل نحن بنحافظ على الملكية الفكرية أو الفكرة بتعود نفسها للشخص، أم أنها بتعود هاي كلها أفكار ذكاء اصطناعي؟ نحن نتخلى عن أفكارنا، عن حقوقنا الملكية أو الإبداعية اللي إحنا بنطلعها، فبيكون هاي كله فكرة ذكاء اصطناعي مش فكرتنا إحنا.
Gotcha. My understanding is that every ruling that has come out of a legal situation, out of a copyright office, is that the information generated by an AI is not copyrightable. it can't, yeah, I mean, it's still humans who create that type of information. And as long as humans control the courts and the copyright offices, it will remain that way. If we give up control to the generative AI tools, maybe we're hosed at that point, but I think we're okay. Good to go? No?
We can have one more question.
One tough question, please.
Yes, no, one last question. شكرا باول، يعني أنا استمتعت جدا بالمحاضرة والعرض اللي قدمته، وأعتقد أنه في فائدة يعني عظيمة جدا. يعني الآن كما تعلم بأنه نماذج الذكاء الاصطناعي في تطور، بدأ نوع من التحول من نماذج المساعد ال AI assistant إلى النماذج الوكيل ال AI agent، وأمثلة واضحة عليها. يعني مثلا الشات جي بي تي بيعطيك مساعد بيسترجع بيانات، بينما لو استخدمت مانوس اللي هو الصيني ممكن هو ينفذ لك المهام. يعني إذا بدك تروح رحلة ممكن يوصف لك إياها، لكن مانوس ممكن يحجز التذاكر ويحجز الفندق ويعمل لك كل المهام. إذا طبقناه على شيء قريب من المكتبات الآن في الليتريتشر ريفيو، في المراجعات الأدبية، الشات جي بي تي لا تستطيع أنك في الشات جي بي تي لا تستطيع أن تثق فيه في أي معلومات أنه تأخذها كما هي كما أشرت، لكن في نماذج أخرى تستطيع أن تثق فيها. وأنا شخصياً جربت يعني بعض هذه النماذج، وفعلاً رجع لمصادر حقيقية وعمل السايتيشن وأعطاك ملخص إلها وأعطاك اللينك الحقيقي إلها، وبعضها يعني بحوث أنا ناشرها. فلذلك في تطور يعني كبير. عملية التحول من ال AI assistant إلى ال AI agent كبيرة. سؤالي الآن، هل تتوقع من خبرتك أنه يكون ممكن في المستقبل القريب السنة الجاية أو اللي بعدها يكون في library AI agent أو cataloging AI agent؟ هذا سؤالي.
It's an excellent question. It's not as hard as some of the ones you've been asking, so thank you. Sure, it could happen. I haven't seen evidence that anybody is building what you've just described in particular, but one of the fun platitudes, again, my words are leaving me, but the fun things to always talk about with AI is that today, on the 2nd or 3rd of September, it's the worst it's ever going to be. And tomorrow, it's going to be better, and these agents will get better. Things are much better than they were originally, right, with the citations in particular. The developers have done a fair job of improving. You know, it's not perfect, but it is certainly better. Yeah, it could happen. I don't think it's going to be 1 or 2 years. It might start in 1 or 2 years, but those are the tools that we will definitely, as librarians, be keeping a very close eye on. And if you find a tool that 90, 92, 97% of the time does solve that particular problem, maybe at that point you can say, go for it. But you also then have to decide what's the cost of that 3% even. If there are 3% wrong whatevers, is that acceptable? Maybe, maybe not. So stay tuned, I guess. Thank you very much.